Hello, welcome back to the ballroom. I'm Jocelyn Wagman, a graduate student in social work and public health and a founder and leader of the Student Alliance for Sexual Safety at PSU. I'm really excited to introduce the Sexual Wellness Advocacy Team from the University of Oregon. The Sexual Wellness Advocacy Team, or SWAT, presents an original performance on the intersections of oppression and identity with sexual violence. Devised from both lived and observed experiences, SWAT addresses the impact of rape culture on college students today. Through theater and other interactive techniques, SWAT advocates for healthy sexual relationships and works to prevent sexual assault and dating violence on campus. The SWAT program serves as a model of dynamic and engaging, peer-facilitated prevention efforts and has presented at national and regional conferences. SWAT also presents regularly for fraternity and sorority life, university athletics, students of color and queer student unions, student government, classes, and other campus groups. I'm going to introduce Abigail Leader, who is going to introduce the rest of the group.
Yeah, Abigail!
Hi there. So yes, my name is Abigail Leader. I'm the Director of Experiential Education and Prevention Initiatives at the University of Oregon and get to direct SWAT. And we are all really excited. We've been working for a number of weeks pulling this performance together, especially for this conference. I want to give special thanks to Eric Brayman, who has been instrumental in bringing this all together. And we'd like you to note that the stories that are being expressed today come from U of O students, but are not necessarily the lived experiences of the students that are performing them. Please join me in welcoming the Sexual Wellness Advocacy Team.
A lot of people will tell you that what happened can't be rape.
They'll say you were drunk or that you were on a date.
They'll say your skirt was pretty short or you took him back to your place.
Or he paid for all of your drinks.
He'll say it can't be rape.
Because you're a flirt.
Because you matched on some dating app.
Or he made you come.
He'll say you didn't scream.
You weren't hurt. You didn't fight. There was no gun.
You might even tell yourself, it can't be rape.
You'll say, well, I went out with him again.
Or I'd had sex with him before.
You'll say it's not like I'm a virgin, or I know he didn't mean it.
You might say it can't be rape because I'm a guy.
Or I'm queer.
They'll say it happened years ago and he said he was sorry.
You might hear it from everyone around you.
You might hear it from yourself.
You might even think that it's true.
That it can't be rape.
Except that yes, it can.
And yeah, it was.
Rape is ignored, accepted, and excusable thanks to a culture that supports perpetrators in being excused for their actions and places the blame and/or responsibility on survivors.
This is rape culture.
Rape culture comes in many forms. It is seen, it is heard, it is learned, and it is lived.
Rape culture is not simply an idea, it is an active practice in society.
Let's break this down for a second.
Rape culture is seen.
Rape culture is seeing guys ogle at girls walking to a Halloween party a few blocks from campus. It's guys high-fiving over the heads of drunk girls. It's gay men touching women's breasts without permission. It's the way women of color are sexualized on the movie screen and the way trans women are fetishized.
Rape culture is 50 Shades of Grey.
It's seeing my friend's perpetrator still living in the hall.
It's the casual and apathetic dismissal of a survivor's experience.
It's seen in the invisibility of marginalized people and the greater impact of sexual violence in our communities.
Rape culture is heard.
Rape culture is that guy sitting on the bus, hitting on the woman sitting uncomfortably across from him. It's hearing a prison rape joke and then hearing loud laughter. It's the father character on the sitcom crying because his daughter lost her virginity and yet fist bumps his son after his first time.
Rape culture is telling women the safest way to wear our hair.
Rapists can easily grab a ponytail.
It's the excuses, dismissals, and disregard of survivors' stories.
I mean, it's hard to tell when you're blacked out.
Well, what did you do to make him think you wanted it?
Huh, you can't be raped by a girl.
If a girl hooked up with you while you were passed out, then you got lucky.
It's being told that it wasn't rape and knowing they're only saying that because you're trans
Or Latino.
or alter-abled.
Rape culture is learned. Rape culture is taught by parents during the talk, when boys are told to control themselves and girls are told to protect themselves. It is learned in the locker room when guys laugh about making their girlfriends try anal, and it is learned in health class when non-penis and vagina sex is purposefully ignored and excluded.
It is learned when a parent shames their child just for asking questions about sex.
It is when I am taught how to not get raped.
But I am never taught how not to rape.
It's learned when I'm labeled stupid, complaining, or a liar when I call out rape culture.
It is learned through slut-shaming of reality TV shows.
The worship of Hugh Hefner.
And porn that almost never shows consent.
Rape culture is lived.
Rape culture is learned when I have to worry about crossing the street at night to avoid a large group of men. It's lived when I, as a survivor, worry that when I share my story, I'm going to be called weak or seeking attention. It's lived when I get laughed at for being too drunk when he raped me.
It is lived when my best friend tries to manipulate me emotionally and others say,
"Aw, it's cute, he likes you."
It is lived when a no is not respected because someone is too drunk.
Or is an employee.
Or a sex worker.
Or black.
It's staying in bed for days on end, feeling like your rapist wins and being depressed about it.
It's when voices are silenced because society is too stubborn to change.
Or when a survivor is outed.
Or betrayed by their academic institution.
Is when rape is used as a tool of oppression and colonization in Native communities around the world.
It's looking at your younger sister and trying to explain to her that what happened isn't okay, because the same thing happened to you.
Rape culture is learning that what happened that night was actually rape. Rape culture is the understanding that non-consensual sex is not only acceptable, but expected. Rape culture is disclosing an assault to my best friend and having her tell me that
all girls have sex when they don't want it.
I would like to start with a quote by Lily Allen. If you can't detect the sarcasm, you've misunderstood. Rape culture doesn't exist. It is just hairy, angry feminists accusing sweet, innocent boys of a horrific crime that we, as Americans, have already outlawed. So can the hysterics just quiet down already? Rape culture doesn't exist. It is just sluts ashamed of what they've done the night before, trying to destroy the careers of nice young boys that we, as Americans, have raised. So can the dissenters just shut up already? Rape culture doesn't exist. It is just women being hysteric, slandering boys that we, as Americans, care about. So can the bitches stop spreading their filthy lies? Rape culture doesn't exist because I, a cishet, middle-class, white-privileged man, say so. Rape culture does exist. Rape culture exists in every look over my shoulder at night to make sure that strange man is not actually following me. In every percentage of the 97% of rapists that never face a day in jail. In every purity ball. In every white privileged groping of a black man, in every child that has been abused by their relative, in every time a man is told you can't be raped, in every time a queer person is compared to a pedophile, in every person who is told they weren't raped because they weren't penetrated, in every prison that uses rape as a tool to keep prisoners in line, in every just relax, you'll love it, in every utterance of boys will be boys, in every joke that no means yes and yes means anal, in every time my story was silenced because my rapist was well-liked and I was a slut. Rape culture does exist until you interrupt it.
I'm a survivor of sexual violence. Even before I was assaulted my freshman year of college, I remember hearing my dad's voice in my head always reminding me that I will never be safe. Society has shown us that a woman alone is an easy target. Walking down a public street at night, I think of all the tips and tricks I've heard to protect myself. Should I hold my keys as claws or grasp my water bottle as a weapon of self-defense? I think of witty responses to the cat calls, but I never use them because I know it's safer just to keep walking. I had all these fears and precautions in my mind ingrained into me long before I was assaulted, long before I called myself a survivor.
As a woman of color, I realized systems of racism and sexism work hand in hand to define my experience on this campus. Being a woman of color is confusing because despite what our individual cultures teach us about sexuality, we are often diminished to be nothing more than some fulfillment of some sexual fantasy. I didn't realize the sexual pressures that were associated with my race until I was super into this white guy. We hung out for the first time and he kissed me. He was like, "Oh, I've never kissed a black girl before. You know, I've never hooked up with a black girl either. Your lips are so big. What do those big lips do?" I'll never forget what he said because that's how all white men treat me. People assume the attention should be flattering about women like us, but I'm not something to check off a list. You know, I'm so many things, but you only see a few, you know, the lips, the ass, the attitude, the fact that I'm different. To him, it was just my brown skin, and that was what made me attractive. The fact that he'd never done it before.
I remember one time I was talking with a friend in high school about this relationship that he was in. He told me that they had been together for a number of years. They were even planning on getting engaged. He told me how caring and dependent the relationship was, how the girl had struggled with anxiety and fought depression for so long, how he was her only support in that fight. And I thought, how great of a relationship is that? But then she accused him of raping her and getting her pregnant. I didn't want to believe that my friend, someone who was so young, so kind, so intelligent, could even think of doing something like that. I know now that what I should have done is believed her story and offered her the support that she needed.
Gender has always been a difficult thing for me. Our whole world is coded everywhere with gender expectations and roles. Just take a walk through the store. Toys, clothes, binders, pens, toothbrushes, for goodness sake, are all assigned to either boy or girl. I did not get this at all growing up. I remember picking out a Wolverine binder for school and my mother replacing it with Tinkerbell. Now, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she was really awesome. But the traditional child-raising and homemaker role she played never made any sense for my life. I didn't see myself with a family or a husband. I just saw myself being able to have a Wolverine binder without anybody telling me to put it back.
After what happened, I was lost. I felt so alone. My family lives down in California, and I was honestly just ashamed to tell my friends what had happened. The counseling center set me up with an advocate, which helped me regain some sense of normalcy, but I knew that my place in the world had changed. When I did finally tell my friends, I faced criticism. I was called a slut and a liar. I was asked about what I was wearing and how much I had to drink that night. I wasn't asked about my mental health. I wasn't asked about the avalanches of anxiety that I would face every time I have to walk by his dorm. I wasn't asked what it felt like to see the man who assaulted me on campus the very next day.
Being a woman of color is not only experiencing the fear of walking down the street alone at night by yourself as a woman, but it's knowing that catcallers feel especially okay with targeting you because you're different. I guess we ask for that kind of attention, because of stereotypes about women like us. This makes it all that much easier to blame us when we're sexually assaulted. We need to acknowledge that sexual violence is much more prevalent among women of color. We need to understand that a survivor's skin color could be a deterrent in whether they decide to press charges or not against their rapist, because it's more likely for them that their rapist will be white, and therefore, they'll be in the right.
I grew up on a rural farm, way out in the middle of nowhere. I spent most of my life isolated from what I considered the greater part of society. My only experience with things like racism and sexism came from the movies that my mom brought home from the library, and what was barely touched upon in school. As I entered my adult life, I tried to figure out what these things are, why they even exist in the first place. Race, gender, class, all things that are socially constructed and yet play a massive role in how we're supposed to act and how others treat us in return. What I thought was significant to my identity was that I'm big. I'm a musician, I love to play music, and I do my hardest to do what I think is right. Isn't that what we all do? Isn't that what our identity is? Being white, being straight, being male didn't really have any significance to me until I realized the power and privilege that is assigned to those identities, as well as the disadvantages that are assigned to those who don't share those identities.
Being both genderqueer and a survivor of sexual assault is difficult. My perpetrator was a man, and I'm often perceived as a woman. I found that sharing that I'm a survivor often forces me into a gender binary because people assume that I'm a woman. The advocate I worked with after the assault wrote "she" throughout the course of the notes. And my friends, ones who know that I identify as genderqueer, said so many women are impacted by this. You're not alone. Funny, hearing that, I felt more alone than I ever had before. Anatomy suddenly trumped identity, and I was forced into a gender binary in which I don't belong.
This community is great. It saved my life. But I don't always feel comfortable outing myself as a survivor or a victim or whatever. Like, people could see my story and think of me as a number and not see the complexities of it. This has helped me understand how truly varied and unique our experiences of assault are. That my experiences of being respected, heard, represented always in my community is not a privilege that's shared by all. It's my job as a privileged member to make sure that voices are heard and that people who are targeted more often are invited to the table.
As a woman of color, I acknowledge that all of our experiences are not the same. Women from different communities and races will experience sexual violence in different ways, and I cannot speak for all of those. But I can use my experience as a Black woman to change norms within my own culture and my own community and make a difference in sexual violence in my own life. As a woman of color, we can stand by one another, acknowledging that this world is going to treat us differently, and that we are more than just the fulfillment of some white men's fantasies. Together, we can recognize our power, our beauty, and our divinity.
I've quickly learned that what we think is significant to our identity isn't always what society places the most value on. So I've decided to take a stand in solidarity with those who want to take control of their identity and challenge the roles given to them. Because I don't do what I'm supposed to do. I despise conformity, and I'm interested in, care for, respect, and love people for who they are as individuals, not for who they're told to be. Now, I understand that there are things that I will never be able to truly comprehend because identity is personal. I was called every slur in the book in high school, but I will never experience racism or sexism or homophobia. And it's vitally important for all of us as human beings to check ourselves. People have boundaries, and we have to make sure that our actions are privy to those boundaries. We have to challenge oppressive actions, oppressive language, and perspectives head on.
I have chosen to take action and be a voice in the survivor and victim community to ensure there is a recognition and representation of genderqueer individuals impacted by sexual violence. Yes, women are the community most impacted by sexual assault. And yes, men are the most likely to be perpetrators. However, women can still be perpetrators, men can still be survivors, and genderqueer individuals, we can still be both. Improving the work, to me, means recognizing the statistics, but also honoring the experiences of those who don't fit into the largest percentage.
We all have the power, the opportunity to stand up and say something.
To be a voice when others are silent.
To share our stories and raise awareness.
To challenge the status quo and improve the work.
This work is not easy.
But it is vitally important.
It's not perfect.
But it's continuing to improve so long as you allow yourself to learn.
To be challenged.
To apologize.
To grow.
Rape culture is the reason it took me years of fear and self-blame to realize, you know what, I am a survivor.
When I found a community of survivors, I realized I could make it through, and I began to interrupt rape culture.
I interrupt rape culture by refusing to believe that boys can't control themselves.
Exactly.
I interrupt rape culture by saying something when I see someone being creepy.
I interrupt rape culture by being a bad bitch and a feminist, because to me, those words aren't mutually exclusive.
Yes, preach!
I interrupt rape culture by always believing survivors and telling them that, you know what, it wasn't your fault.
Thank you.
By fighting harmful gender stereotypes.
And racism.
And heteronormativity.
And class privilege.
And ableism.
And xenophobia.
And acknowledging that it is all important, it is all intertwined, and it is all unique.
I interrupt rape culture by knowing resources for survivors and their allies.
By letting people know that rape is not always physically painful.
By confronting victim blaming head on.
And by refusing the notion that it's just the way things are.
Because it's not.
By standing up to fear.
By asking instead of just taking.
By expecting more from society.
By loudly and unapologetically shouting,
No! By being angry as hell.
By realizing that silence will always become the voice of the oppressor when allies don't speak up.
Ending rape culture is on me. It's on you, and it's on all of us.
Ending rape culture will not come through one simple task. It will require a complete overturn and upheaval of our society. It's on us.
Together, let's end rape culture.
What? When do you...
There have been so many inspiring conversations and performances and keynotes today. I'm really excited. Yeah.
There are several people who made this day possible. First, and again, thank you to SWAT for traveling and sharing your art.
Thank you. Thank you to Dr. Treva Lindsay for her inspiring keynote.
Thank you to Dr. John Friday, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Affairs, Michelle Topi, Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Student Life, and Julie Karen, Associate Vice President for Global Diversity and Inclusion and Title IX Coordinator.
Thank you to the Best Practices Conference Planning Committee. Please stand as you are able. Yay. There's a few of you out there. Thank you. It's kind of dark.
Thank you to the Take Back the Day Student Symposium Planning Committee. Please stand as you are able.
Thank you to all the volunteers who made this day possible. So many of you. Please stand as you are able.
And thank you to the participants for taking time out of your busy lives and schedules to spend the day learning about and thinking about sexual violence prevention and response. We hope that the day was productive and a good use of your time, and we strongly encourage your feedback.
Please remember to fill out your evaluations. And finally, come to Take Back the Night. In just at 5:30, we are going to turn the room around really quickly. So if you could all help us by picking up after yourselves, that would be really great. And then come back at 5:30 for Take Back the Night. Thanks.
Thank you.